She's an actor of both stage and screen and has been linked to such leading men as Robert Wagner and William Holden. And she works tirelessly in support of wildlife preservation. But she'll always be remembered for her role as Jennifer Hart on the hit TV series Heart to Heart. Hi, I'm Ernie Manouse. On this episode of Interviews, our conversation with Emmy and Golden Globe nominee Stefanie Powers. Do you think of yourself as an actress?
That's a good question. From time to time, yes. I don't wake up in the morning with that idea. But it's my job. It's also something I've been doing for most of my life. And thank God. When I was very young when all of this happened to me. I don't know that today, under the circumstances, I would have been so fortunate, or that it would have happened quite as accidentally as it did. But it was accidental, and yet I had worked as a dancer, so I had trained. So it was accidental, except that it was that I was ready for it, I suppose. And so when I auditioned as a dancer for Jerome Robbins for the movie West Side Story, 16 dance auditions later and 3 screen tests, I was hired. And but I was also fired because I was just about 16 at the time, and I was the only minor on the movie, and certainly my part was not so important to the production that they couldn't replace me easily, right. Which they did, and they did it with the dancer who had played the part on Broadway, who later became a very good friend, who was later married to Robert Morris. Bobby Morris and I did a movie together. Life was very incestuous in those days, so we all stayed very much in touch, and I still see George Chakiris, and I still see Rita D'Amico and some of the dancers from West Side Story, so we've all stayed in touch as much as possible.
That's where you met Robert Wagner.
I met Robert Wagner for the first time along with all the other dancers when Natalie was cast.
Ah, okay.
That was our first meeting, but that he could even possibly remember me was remarkable because there were so many at the time.
Was it what you wanted to do? I always wonder about that when someone starts
I
off so
wanted to be a veterinarian or an archaeologist. Those were my
So you became a dancer.
So I became a dancer naturally. I was fascinated by archaeology. I still am, and veterinary. I'm a frustrated veterinarian anyway. So, and I get to practice it every once in a while. Certainly as an assistant, because I have a lot of animals in my care.
Is the love of animals the passion of your life more so than acting, or don't you see them different?
Pure passion is the love of animals and the environment, and the quest to create greater awareness and greater personal responsibility and attachment to both for the future of humanity and for the future of biodiversity and life on this planet. That is a true passion, a lifelong work. But I am passionate about my work as an actor in the theater.
When you talk about the work you do for the animals and all of your work in that area, do you find ever, and I know being the celebrity you are opens a lot of doors, but does that ever work as a hindrance? Do they ever say, she's an actress, and so you're not taken, at least early on, not taken with the same seriousness?
Yes, early on. But I had a lot of extremely good help. I had some extraordinary people who helped me along the way and educated me. So I think now, and I can go toe-to-toe with a few animal people who will definitely not make fun of me. I've earned my stripes.
Yeah.
I've gotten my fingernails extremely dirty. That's why they're always short. And I wanted to learn from all of these wonderful people who were generous enough to tutor me.
Yeah. Let me take you back a little bit, talk about the early days in showbiz. You were one of the last people to go in through the studio system.
Gosh, I guess so, yes.
How is that system a good thing or a bad thing? How do you look at it?
Well, first we must qualify it by saying that it was before the corporate world took over everything. No, before the corporate world took over the arts. And before, it was always a business, so there were always deals and deal makers, but more than anything else, they were movie makers. They could have been in any other business, but they were in the movie business because they had to be, because they loved it. Uh-huh. And when you read the stories of, the great founders of the industry, the Warner Brothers, the L.B. Mayer, the Samuel Goldwyn, there was something extraordinary about these men who were pretty much contemporaries, who came from almost the same part of Europe to the United States at almost the same age. And their rise within the industry, or their rise to find themselves in the industry, almost parallels one story to another. So to think that this sort of spontaneous combustion produced these extraordinary men with vision to create a similar fantasy world. When you think about that particular generation, it may be not unique to the film industry, because there were also other people in various industries that were creating history in those industries as well. I think the one common denominator was that they had enormous vision, and because they were in a country where there was so much vitality, there was so much freedom for invention and entrepreneurialness, that it was one of the most creative times in our recent history.
Yeah.
And everybody was a product of that period. Seems to be, those seem to be the names of the founders of every great industry. So it was still an industry when I got into it toward the end of it that was functioning as a large sort of extended family. I couldn't go anywhere to work in Hollywood where I didn't know almost everybody on the crew who had seen me ever since I was growing up in the industry. Hi, how's so-and-so? How's the family? How's everybody knew each other. Everybody had a vested interest, and it was very different. Also, the head of the studio read the scripts and knew the difference between what was a good script and a bad script. He didn't have to consult a marketing researching team or, today, the senior executives of almost every company in the United States is interchangeable. It doesn't matter what they do. They employ the same business tactics. They could be selling widgets or ladies' lingerie or motion pictures. They're doing the same exact thing. All of the business, how shall I say, the same schools produced the same kind of thinkers, and they were all hired at a certain time to create what we think of now as globalization and globalized business. And that's what's happened, basically, to the movie industry. So you see formula on the screen. It costs so much money to release a film that they want insurance. Well, there's so much of a film that's actually indefinably art. You can't really designate which part of it is art or which part of it isn't art. Some are more obvious than others, but it has that unknown quality and it has that tremendous risk. You really cannot make a movie on a piece of paper. You can try, but most of them fail. Thank God.
Can you look at a script and know what's going to work and what not?
No.
Is it just luck of the draw out there?
You can get a feeling. You can enjoy your part. But so much of it depends on who's the cameraman, who's going to shoot it. Does the director know how to shoot it? Mm-hmm. And is the director, does he have a vision of the characters? Do we care about these characters? Are we going to be able to, is it going to be able to be a story that's really told well? Because it's not the actors who are in control of that. It's what's on the page, how it gets edited after 40,000 people see it and say, I don't like that part, but I like this part. And so there's so much that's no longer in the hands of the creative elements.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about how you met William Holden.
Well, let's see, we met several times before we actually really clicked. Really met. The first time I met him, I remember it. He didn't. But of course, I was a teenager, and it was at.
And he was William Holden.
And he was William Holden. It was at a New Year's Eve party that Dominic Dunn, who's a wonderful writer now that everybody knows. Dominic Dunn was always a very good writer and a screenwriter and a playwright and raconteur, and he and his wife would give, every other year, they would give a big bash. And behind every potted palm was a recognizable face. And his was behind the potted palm that was next to me.
That was the face you recognized.
And that was the face, oh, my God, there he is. Yes.
And I don't know how to ask this question, but we know of your relationship with him as being so passionate and so wonderful. Then he passes away. How do you as a person move on in your life? If that's such a great love, and you're both notable people, well known, people are going to continue to keep you together in popular culture. How do you find a way to move on and have your own life after that?
It is my life. He is my life. He is part of my life. So, as anybody is who is, anybody who has lost their mate, they're never out of your life, nor would you want them to be. They're a part of your life. So they are, if we are the sum total of, our DNA, our genetic inherited traits, our environmental experiences, we are a whole of that. Who I am today is inextricably related to who I was with him, and all the things I shared with him, cared about, things he taught me, things I hopefully taught him. Yeah. So I never think of trying to get over the loss, or a loss of anybody. I don't think you get over. I don't think that's the object of the exercise. I think it is to find a comfortable way to live with the loss. The fact that they're not going to be there physically on a daily basis, and you're not going to have that relationship continually throughout your life. That's something we all have to come to terms with, we who survive. If we're surviving a child, the loss of a parent, the loss of a loved one of any kind, we who survive that find ways to live with the loss instead of trying to overcome it. I never intended to try and overcome it or forget it. It was too important to me. He was too important to me. And has formed so much of my own character. And I sometimes hear his voice in some of the things I say. And some of the opinions that I have are clearly opinions that were formulated through him, by him, or in association with him. He was a very strong, obviously, and the strongest influence, single influence in my life other than my parents. Yeah. And I think in the beginning, the formation of the William Holden Wildlife Foundation was twofold. It was a way of having something to put my energies into that had to do with him. And it was a memorial to him. Now it feels, it's grown in very many ways, far beyond what he would have imagined, or what I imagined it was ever going to become. So, and one day it will walk on its own without me, so I have to find somebody who's going to take over after I'm gone. It's more important, as he knew, the work of conservation preservation is more important than any individual. We help it along as much as we can while it's our watch, but we have to be able to be prepared and help prepare others to take over when we don't have it anymore.
Explain well so our audience understands what it is that the foundation does.
The William Holden Wildlife Foundation backs up specific animal preservation with education. That's a simple way of explaining what we do. It's multifaceted, but our main thrust is education. We serve over 10,000 students a year at our site in Kenya, in East Africa. They come to us free of charge to our camping facility. They make a deposit, which is instantaneously refundable. They have to bring their own food and their own bedding, but we provide everything else, including the curricula. What we teach is biodiversity. We teach. We have on-site examples of alternatives to destruction of habitat, which is crucial in the developing world. It's crucial in our world, too. We've done it. We've destroyed our habitats in the United States many times. We've been fortunate to be able to replant the forests, many of the forests that were destroyed during the push west, when all of the railroads needed to have increasing amounts of wood to burn to fuel the steam engines. As far as what we're teaching in East Africa, it's trying to find alternatives for people who have been following traditional patterns of behavior in exploitation of land that are no longer working for them. They understand that, they recognize the need, and they're looking for the alternatives. So we have fertile fields to throw our seeds on. And we can show, by example, how companion planting will produce better yields, how animal feces can be used as a source of power through biogas, the production of methane fuel, and the byproduct of highly biodegradable fertilizer, nitrogen-producing fertilizer, non-chemical, non-toxic. We recycle all of our water with permaculture wetlands, so we do not take any more water out of the land than we need. We use solar energy and wind energy to power some of our, to auxiliary power some of our security lines. So we are practicing what we preach, and we're teaching that. Along with the Mount Kenya Wildlife Conservancy, which is the game ranch that Bill Holden started with his partner Don Hunt and Iris Hunt. I'm one of the directors of that, and that is our sister organization. And there are species survival programs of 5 species that can no longer be seen in the wild, as well as some 32 other species, nucleus breeding herds of those species. All of our students have access to the game ranch to view these animals and to understand what biodiversity really means, and how important these species are to their own survival.
That's amazing work.
In addition,
and in your spare time?
In my spare time. All of this has led to increased involvement with other conservationists and other species survival programs, namely the jaguar, which of course is the leopard of the New World. The New World, by that I mean the Americas. about 3 years ago, Jaguar Motor Company and I had a little conversation, and they have remarkable leadership, and they decided to set a precedent in the automotive industry and create the first ever conservation effort of its kind. There has never been an automobile company that has ever dedicated itself to the preservation of the animal it uses as its name and logo until Jaguar. And I helped to author for them the Jaguar Conservation Trust, which has been embraced by the entire company and which is beginning to be embraced by the consumers. I've been visiting dealerships all over the United States, visiting with consumers, with clients of Jaguar, both new car clients, used car clients, and people who bring their Jaguars to be serviced. Their enthusiasm for becoming members of the Jaguar Conservation Trust is inspirational to the company and to all of us.
It must be kind of shocking. You pull in your car and there's Stefanie Powers standing there wanting to talk to you about
I'd like to talk to you about a Jaguar and the four-legged kind.
Yeah.
It's been very interesting, and the reaction has been overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
So there are many of us who believe that we conservationists, or people who are conservation-minded, who believe that in the future, unless and until we can engage the imagination of the corporate world by making conservation into a practice which makes good business sense for the producers and the consumers, we don't have a chance. It's not going to happen. We can be, trying to keep all the water from breaking the dam, and everybody is out there doing a wonderful job, but we're fighting uphill. Yeah. We're really against a lot of superior odds. And unless in the future, as we proceed, we can prove and show ways in which everybody wins, we're going to have a very difficult future.
And to change gears real quick, because we're running out of time, I have to ask about Heart to Heart.
Yes.
How did that come to be? As I understand, Rob Wagner was pushing for you to be...
I was actually doing a production of Cyrano de Bergerac with Stacy Keach, and we were going to play Los Angeles and San Francisco and then go to Broadway. In the course of us playing Los Angeles, I got a telephone call from Tom Mankiewicz, Robert Wagner, and Aaron Spelling, asking about this pilot and would I leave the production, the Cyrano, and all of this. And well, oh my goodness. And I said, well, I'm sort of committed here. And the best newspaper strike in the world happened for me. It happened in New York, and everything that was opening on Broadway was closing. The producers decided not to take the risk, not to bring us into Broadway, and therefore I was free to do the pilot of Heart to Heart. And Robert Wagner specifically said he wouldn't do it without me. So he waited. They wanted to wait. And this is my dog making all this noise. Would you like to say hello? This is Miss Bounce.
Hello, Miss Bounce.
Who goes on the road with me. This is Miss Bounce. She is a combination adopted person rescued off of death row. A combination Shih Tzu, Affin Pincer, who's adorable.
Yes, definitely. It's just funny when you talk about the story about Heart to Heart happening, how something that had nothing to do with you, the newspaper strike, actually changes the whole course of your career and your life.
My life. Yeah, the whole course of my life.
That's amazing. Do you ever wonder do you ever think about it in terms of if that newspaper strike hadn't happened?
Wouldn't it be interesting if we could look back and say, if we hadn't turned that corner, we could have turned this corner, what would have happened? That would be a good computer game.
It'd be fun to see what the answers were, where you would have been today.
Or what the options were. Would have been very interesting.
And you mentioned touring, and you have been doing a lot of stage work. And the thing that I think would have been the most daunting, you replaced Elaine Page in King and I in London?
I replaced Elaine. I didn't. The play was closing, the West End production, and I replaced her. Yes.
That must be a big shoes to fill for a little woman. actually.
I'm taller than she is.
Right. She's supposed to be a little teeny one, right?
She is minuscule. She is minuscule with an enormous voice. It was such a fabulous experience and such a brilliant play to do that when we were given the opportunity of touring the United States, I was thrilled because I also am able to do it with the same actor that played the King in England.
Wonderful.
So we're reunited. And if there's anything that we can point to as a great American art form, it is the musical theater. And in the form of classical musical theater, I think the works of Rodgers and Hammerstein should be regarded as the works of Vivaldi or the works of Verdi, who are done in repertoire continually. The quality of the writing, the quality of the music is so extraordinary that if you simply study Mr. Hammerstein's lyrics and his words, his book, it's a full master class in the best.
Well, I want to
writing.
thank you for coming and sitting down with us in all your spare time because you don't have much to do. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks so much.
Stefanie Powers. To order a transcript, call 866-652-3378 or send $6.95 to the address on your screen. Please include the name of the guest.